Hello all, today we're going to discuss Worth 1,000 Interpersonal Words, Emoji as Effective Signals for Relationship-Oriented Digital Communication by Gesselman, Ta, and Garcia. It was published on PLOS One in August of 2019. If you'd like to read the paper for yourself, check the description for a citation and link. Before we get into the paper itself, I want to talk a little bit about traditional journals versus open access. Most journals get their revenue from subscriptions and thus restrict access to their articles to people who purchase said subscriptions, either individually or through databases like PsycInfo. PLOS is one of a relatively new class of so-called open access journals, whose source of revenue is a submission fee charged to scientists who wish to publish with them. This allows the journal to make their articles free for everyone to access and read. The main downside to publishing in these journals is the cost associated with submitting articles, but oftentimes universities and other research institutions are willing to cover the fee. There are also concerns that less reputable sources will accept subpar research just because they want the money. Okay, onto the paper. It should go without saying that computer-mediated communication is becoming increasingly common in dating. People are using dating apps more, and thus are communicating with each other through digital means well in advance to meeting in person. Also like to add that this is even more the case since the onset of COVID-19 and social distancing practices. In normal face-to-face communication, we rely a lot on nonverbal cues to understand what the other person means. We also use things like tone of voice to infer, for example, whether someone is being sarcastic or not. None of those exist in text-based computer-mediated communication. So, enter emojis. They originally derived from emoticons, and since their introduction in 2011, they've expanded to express all sorts of things from silliness to disgust to sexual interest and beyond. It has even been theorized that the graphical nature of emojis allows them to more effectively convey the nuances of effective communication than simple text. So what is effective communication? The authors define it as communication that enables the receiver to detect the affective or emotional state of the sender. In a face-to-face context, this can include tone of voice and body language, but in a texting context, those cues aren't present. And not having those cues can matter even more in a dating context. As relationships build, interpersonal communication goes from being more superficial to being more intimate. This is done largely through self-disclosure. Partners feel comfortable advancing to deeper levels of intimacy as they get their partner better. In other words, as they come to understand their partner's emotions better, they know they are able to reveal more of themselves and won't be hurt by them. However, if people are getting to know each other through instant messaging software, they may not be able to do that effective communication as well, and thus hinder their advances to greater levels of intimacy and self-disclosure. With all this in mind, the authors set out to examine how emoji use might predict dating success. They felt that emoji use was an indicator of effective affective communication. Since heavy emoji users are better effective communicators, they can advance in intimacy quicker and thus have more success in dating. For Study 1, they obtained data from the annual Singles in America study sponsored by Match.com. Participants themselves were collected by Research Now, a firm that specializes in this kind of thing. Research Now collected a nationally representative sample through opt-in interest panels. To ascertain emoji use, participants were asked, how frequently do you use emojis or emoticons in your text messages to a date? And responded using a 5-point interval scale. Participants were asked to select which of these 4 motives best describes why they use emojis. They could select as many as they wanted. They were also asked how many dates they had been on in the past year and how often they had sex in the past year. And now results. Controlling for age and gender, emoji use was positively associated with both frequency of dates and frequency of sex in the past year. And, by social psychology standards, those are some pretty solid effect sizes. Effect size is a measure of how much variance in your outcome of interest your predictor explains, whereas p-value is basically if your hypothesized effect exists. Effect size is how big that effect is. For Study 2, they recruited 275 single American adults through Amazon's Mechanical Turk. MTurk is a platform that allows researchers to recruit participants for their studies. The participants then are paid through the platform at an average rate of approximately 10 cents a minute. Additionally, participants must be current users of a dating app or website and use a messaging software with emoji capabilities. Participants were asked if they preferred computer-mediated communication over phone calls or face-to-face interactions, how frequently they used computer-mediated communication, and how often they used emojis when messaging with potential dates, number of first and second dates in the past year, sexual frequency in the last year, and details about their most recent date including emoji use, whether a second date happened, physical intimacy, and how often they were in contact with the other person since said first date. And now results. For all the following regression models, note that the authors controlled for age, gender, CMC preference, and CMC frequency. In all of the models, none of those variables were significant predictors. Emoji use was not significantly associated with number of first dates. Emoji use was associated with number of second dates. Emoji use was quite strongly associated with sexual frequency. And emoji use predicted number of sexual partners. The authors then did another series of logistic and linear regression models to examine how emoji use predicted outcomes on the participant's most recent date. Logistic regression models how a continuous predictor predicts a binary outcome. They found that emoji use positively predicted whether the participant would go on a second date and even enter into a relationship with that person. Emoji use also positively predicted whether the participants kissed their date and/or had sex with them. And finally, emoji use really strongly predicted how frequently the participants were in contact with their most recent date. So in sum, I think we can definitively say that frequent emoji use is associated with more success in dating. Honestly, there's not a lot to this paper, so only one takeaway today. However, correlation is not causation. We do not have causality here. We don't even really have directionality, so that's a huge caveat. It could be that people who use emojis more just happen to be more socially skilled, and thus have more luck because of that. It could be that people who use emojis have much more active dating lives. It could also be that emoji users are more promiscuous. It could be something else that I'm not thinking of. Also, these two studies were retroactive. Retroactive studies are quite prone to memory biases, which can result in less accurate data. The authors also note that they didn't measure which emojis participants used, and that could have some unseen effect on their results. So, going forward, I really want to see more work done examining all the possible mediators I just described. It would also be helpful to do some longitudinal work to see if emoji use actually leads to more dates and intimacy. A daily diary study could work quite well in this vein. And if all that works well, it might be interesting to try some experimental manipulations of emoji use. This could be conducted in a naturalistic way, where you assign participants to use emojis a lot, or not. Or, for a less time-intensive method, you could simply do a scripted interaction with a confederate in which the confederate uses a lot of emojis, or not. Well, that's all for now. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you've got a paper you'd like me to dissect, or more thoughts on this one, let me know in the comments.